Good morning, class. Welcome to Mr. Chin's first grade class. Today we will learn about reading comprehension for first graders. And for reading comprehension, we are going to learn from Indiana academic standards of knowing the sequence of stories and to identify key details in the lesson of the story. Today we will be reading a story called Rapunzel. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day, the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and began to look pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't eat some of the rampion which is in the garden behind our house, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of the rampion yourself, let it cost what it will." At twilight he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress. The young king's son, he is with me in a moment. "Ah, you wicked child," cried the enchantress, "what do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snip, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert where she had to live in great grief and misery. What did they do to Rapunzel's hair?
They colored it.
Good job. You did a good job for identifying a key detail. On the same day that she cast out Rapunzel, however, the enchantress fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window. And when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the hair down. What do you think is going to happen next when she let her hair down?
The sun's king is gonna climb up into the tower of the house.
Good job. You were able to predict what would happen next. The king's son ascended, but instead of finding his dearest Rapunzel, he found the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous look. "Ah," she cried mockingly, "you would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her again." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did naught but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it. And when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. Two of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and he lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. The end. What do you think was the lesson of the story? What do you think the meaning was? What were they trying to say? What were they trying to tell you? What do you think?
That Rapunzel wanted to marry the prince.
Good. So it could be about Princess Rapunzel that fell in love with the king's son because she wanted to be married and have a husband, right?
Yeah, that's what happened when there was a show that was called Rapunzel.
Oh,
It was a very sad ending when he almost died.
okay, good. So now we're going to go to our next story. This story is called Cinderella. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect you, and I will look down on you from heaven and be near you." Thereupon she closed her eyes and departed. Every day the maiden went out to her mother's grave and wept, and she remained poised and good. When winter came, the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, and by the time the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. The woman had brought with her into the house two daughters who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" they said. "He who wants to eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old gray bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is," they cried, and laughed and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning to night, get up before daybreak, carry water, light fires, cook and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the hearth in the cinders. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella. How do you think they treated Cinderella?
Like a slave.
Good, and how do you know that?
Because they put her like a bed.
Mm-hmm. What else did they do to her?
They made her do the dishes. They made her cook. Then they made her wash the dishes. They made her do the fire.
Okay. Okay.
She made her
Okay.
feed the
Good.
chickens and
Okay,
all
stop. That's enough. Okay, good. For to find those details. It happened that the father was once going to the fair, and he asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "Cinderella, and you, Cinderella," said he, "what will you have, father? Break off for me the first branch which knocks against your hat." Your hat. Where I lost my spot. On your way home. So he thought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for his stepdaughter, and on his way home he was riding through a green thicket. A hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things which they had wished for, and to Cinderella, and gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him and went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it. Okay, so let's kind of go forward. Let's see. Okay. So when Cinderella goes to the he looked. So they're at the ball. He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe, and how it stained her white stocking quite red. So we went to the ball. They're dancing, and then Cinderella runs away. And while she runs away, she loses her glass slipper because it broke off her foot and it cut her. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home. And "This is not the right one," and said he. "Have you?" Oh, so the prince. So they went to the ball. They danced. Cinderella ran away, and then he had one of her glass shoes, and then he went to Cinderella's house. But Cinderella's house was, they locked her up, and they said that one of the stepdaughters was the wife, was the owner of the glass slipper. But when she wore the glass slipper, it broke and it cut her. Then that's when he said, "This Also, this also is not the right one. It said, "He have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There's still a little stunned kitchen wench which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." So, what do you think the king is gonna do?
Unlock herself.
Good. So he's probably gonna try to see her, even though the evil stepmom doesn't want him to see her, right? Good. Say
Yes.
okay. The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." But he absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it on the slipper, which fitted like a glove. Okay, the end. So, what do you think that the shoe fitted Cinderella?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So, what do you think was the lesson of the story?
The same thing goes for Rapunzel. Cinderella wanted to marry the prince.
Okay. So, what else is there? Like, what's the meaning of it? Like, what did you take away from it? Like, what did you learn from the story? Okay, so we know that maybe you should find a good husband or a good wife, right? And what else did you learn from it? What do you think it means? Maybe it's about maybe treating someone a certain way, right? So you shouldn't treat someone bad, right? Okay. Never mind.